Co and Joe.
And on a special Joe and Joe weather show tonight, we'll be talking the winter outlook for 2022-2023. We have special guest National Weather Service meteorologist Bill Goodman from NWS in Upton, New York. In case you don't know where Upton is, it's on Long Island. Retired National Weather Service meteorologist Toni Gigi, forecaster from Mount Holly in New Jersey, and also an avid golfer with a golf cap. And of course, we have a lot of weather going on across the U.S., including what could be a sizable severe weather outbreak on Tuesday in parts of the South and in some of the Gulf states. We're going to be talking about that. The weather in the East on Wednesday, which could get windy and rainy again. All that and more coming up tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, where you have 4 meteorologists, and if you line them all up together, who knows, they may actually come to a conclusion. Brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, serving the entire New York, New Jersey tri-state area with everything you need. This coming winter, they are Long Island's largest rock salt source, and you don't have to be on Long Island to get rock salt. If you're coming from elsewhere, they will service you. We also have all the great snow and ice melt products, new snow blowers in case you need one, and of course other supplies to get you through a winter storm should one come. 631-756-1125, the best prices in town, and the website is Mr. Rayo. Did I lose?
Can you hear me?
I can now.
You hear me?
The website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Ta-da!
And here we are. We're not quite Brady Bunchish. We need 5 more, but we're nice and square here. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Joe Cioffi. Joe Rayo is right underneath. I got to point the opposite direction. To my left, on the upper left, is National Weather Service meteorologist, a retired National Weather Service meteorologist, currently occupying golf courses throughout the eastern part of the United States, Toni Gigi. And we have, of course, our good buddy, fellow grandfather, meteorologist Bill Goodman from NWS in Upton, New York on Long Island. So welcome, guys. I hope everything is going well.
Yes, thank you, Joe.
It's been a while since we've seen you here.
Bill, me, us together?
Well, the 4 of us together. We haven't done this, I think, since last winter, was it? Or did we do one going into hurricane season? I forget.
No, I wasn't in the hurricane season, so no, it was last winter. Last time we probably had a threat of snow.
Okay, well, I
think I popped in during hurricane season once.
Well, we've got you here, and of course, everybody asks the question, what's the winter going to be like, as if we know. I don't know why people ask this. We really don't know, but the best that we can do is really kind of look at clues that are thrown out, and I'm going to just throw this out to the both of you, and then Joe will follow up with a question, I'm sure. We had this big lake effect snow event in western New York and north central New York, and also in northwest PA a little over a week ago. And it was major, obviously, from what we saw what the outcome was with the snow measuring in feet. My contention is that you usually don't see, even though obviously that did not happen along the coastal plain, but I don't remember seeing mega lake effect snow events in years where the rest of the Northeast does not also at some point get into a solid stretch of wintertime weather. So I'd be curious, Anthony, what your thoughts on that are.
Well, I think back to the showing my age, the 76-77 winter when Buffalo really got crushed. And I don't remember the one with Cuomo where he was complaining about snow plows and forecasts for Buffalo. I mean, that was in this century. But the 76, 77 winter, I mean, it eventually snowed. I mean, it wasn't the best winter in the world. It was cold, but but it wasn't a shutout. I mean, it wasn't like down here in Philly, a less than 10-inch winter, and up in New York, it wasn't a less than 20-inch winter.
Bill, any thoughts on my theory?
I'm going to have to defer to Tony on that. I mean, 76, 77, it was. I mean, it was cold, but not. I don't think there was very much snow that winter. That's the one that I think of. The one, and I don't remember the one. I don't remember the more recent one.
As I recall that, I think for New York City, I wasn't living on Long Island at the time. The snowfall for the season was it was in the 20s someplace, middle 20s, a little bit below average, probably closer to average when you go north and west of the coast. But my overall general contention is that this event is not sort of a one-time freakish thing that happened, in the sense that it happens and then the rest of the winter is a totally snowless, warm weather in the east type of winter. It seems to me, when I was looking back at some of the years where there have been these big lake effect snow events early, the winters that have followed, in the months that followed, it's not a one-off. Other things happen. Other events happen. Now, specifically, I couldn't tell you, what it means in terms of total numbers, but it's not like a year, say, in a super La Nina or super El Nino year, where sometimes you get those snows in late October, early November, and then the winter months come and you get next to nothing.
I think the winter of 76, 77 was predominated by Alberta Clipper type storms. I don't think we had a single storm that came up along the eastern seaboard or moved off the mid-Atlantic coast. There were one or two storms in my memory that did develop somewhere east of the Delmarva or South Jersey that intensified enough to give us a few inches and one dropping. But the thing I remember about that winter was the cold. It was a brutally cold winter. I could remember a couple of days where temperatures were struggling just to make it above 10 degrees at Central Park. The big winter, of course, was the winter that followed, 77, 78, which contained not one but two massive snowstorms, one that was pretty much unpredicted. It was thought that it would be more rain than snow. That was the storm of January 20th, 1978. That was followed 17 days later by the memorable blizzard of 78, which dumped anywhere from 15 to 25 inches on the tri-state area. But the winter before, if that was the winter of snow, 77, 78, the winter before, 76, 77, I think, was more leaning toward extreme cold as opposed to snow.
It was a very cold October. It was a very cold November, and it was a very cold December. I think it didn't. I remember. I think it may have been Alan Casper. I don't know if Alan's on, but hi, Alan, if you are. I think that's the first time I ever heard the expression pattern change was when February finally turned normal. January was extremely cold also. We had like 4 months of really brutally cold weather.
Which would be probably the extent of how long 4 months is a long time to be to be locked in one pattern. That doesn't happen very often.
No.
And plus, it happened in rare instances. At 13, 14, for example, those 4 months were just by coincidence turned out to be December, January, February, and March. That was those were all snowy months. They were all cold months and very cold months in some cases. And 14, 15 was basically truncated between, say, January 15th and probably the first week or so of April. I even, from what my recollection, those two winters, there were two things that happened. One was that 13, 14, there was snow cover on the ground pretty much from the middle, because that was the year well, I'm trying to remember now what happened in that December, but that was the year that I think we had a fairly sizable December snowfall, but we had snow cover on the ground pretty much from the middle part of December to almost the last day of winter in mid-March. And the other the standouts for that, the standout to me for 14-15 was the fact that Lake Ronkonkoma, Bill Goodman, was frozen to the end of March. And that was, just completely solid frozen until the very end of March when the sun angle finally got to it. So those were two, you get a winter like that, you think they're all going to be like that, and that just doesn't work that way.
No. I mean, that was also the winter where I guess the warm pools south of Alaska, sometimes it's the chicken versus the egg with sea surface temperature anomalies. Does one drive the other? Does the other drive the other? Do they work in concert? And that winter, they worked in concert. I mean, you had probably a forever negative EPO ridge. And ever since then, I think like some of the warm pool scenarios, people have seen it and say, oh, that winter is going to be like 13, 14. And you know what? The pieces of Swiss cheese, they don't always come together.
Bill, as a member of the Warm Ground Society, just kidding. Hold that thought for a second. I just want to tell everybody on the chat board, welcome tonight to this special Joe and Joe Weather Show. And for those of you who are lurking in the background, not on the chat board, also a big hello to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We are on Monday through Thursday at 7:35 Eastern Time, Sundays at 11 a.m. And this is our special winter outlook show. If you have any questions or comments, do leave them on the chat board, and Joe and I will monitor it. More Joe Rayo than me. We'll monitor the chat board and pass along any questions, and our guests will certainly be willing to answer them. So here's what I'm thinking. Let's start with the, as I like to call it, les vortex polar, or the polar vortex in the stratosphere, Bill Goodman. It's been stretching and like a piece of taffy for the last 2 months, stretching, ebbing and flowing, just stretching, unstretching, and now we've got it where it actually split for a few days, and then I'm just sort of looking at the guidance. Some of the guidance over the past week was it would split, then one center would emerge, and then that one wanted to split. What's your view here on what's going on way upstairs, and how does that impact what's going on downstairs?
Well, I just happened to look at Judah Cohen's website, where he tries to explain what's going on. He seemed to be talking about positive height anomalies that are in the Ural Mountain region of Eurasia. Now, I think his contention was that if that blocking stayed there, that there was a better chance for a polar vortex split sometime during the winter. But he wasn't very confident in that, and I don't think I am either. I think just because as we go through December, I think that blocking is probably going to retrograde back toward Greenland, and does it stay there? Could it stay there long enough to still to do the job? Possibly. That's so. Judah is not sure, and that's not really my area of expertise. So I'm gonna defer to him on that. But the idea of block retrograding toward Greenland, it does make sense. I mean, the European had been showing that in its seasonal forecast for quite a while now. I saw that in early November.
So I put up the 500 millibar chart, the hemispheric one. So what you're saying is, and I'll circle it. So Judah Cohen's referring to this area that's up from Scandinavia east and extends into the Arctic region. And so he's saying that he's not confident that is going to stay there, or is it going to so you're saying that it's going to retrograde westward, back more toward Greenland rather than be near Scandinavia?
Yeah, that's the idea. And the question is, does it stay there long enough to still have some kind of impact where it could help split the polar vortex later on in the winter? Maybe usually that happens is what happened a few weeks downstream of so I mean that'd be something probably toward late December or early January, I would guess.
Now, Anthony,
I don't know.
go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
I was looking at the GFS, most notably the more recent 18Z, which I rarely ever do, but they've got some weird kind of scenario coming around the second week of December where they actually have an upper low dropping almost straight south into the Atlantic to a position just off of the mid-Atlantic coast and just spiraling around and almost creating its own area of cold air, whirling rain and eventually changing it over to snow over parts of the Northeast. I don't recall seeing that on the 12Z run, but, the 18Z likes to do whatever it likes to do.
I just want to jump in, Joe, real quick, because I was going to say, because when I looked at it too, I sort of stared at the screen, and I don't know, Bill and Tony, if you've seen this, it has got to be the most bizarre looking thing I have ever seen the model try to do, especially in the wintertime. It's one thing in the summer when there's no flow and you get these little upper lows that develop, and sometimes they drift westward or southwestward from the northeast. But this is really bizarre, and I think it's because it's building a big upper high in southern Greenland and out into the Atlantic east of Newfoundland, and it just sort of shoves everything underneath. But I've never seen anything quite like this.
Yeah, I'd tell you, I think the European model was doing that as well. I caught a glimpse of it before I left the office this afternoon, and I think I'm just looking at it real quick. Yeah, it looks the European has it happening about around the 5th or 6th of December. Just huge ridge of Greenland and I guess the Atlantic to the east, and just this big cutoff that's out and just meanders in the Atlantic. But that looks pretty far east, not close enough to do anything our way.
No, and look, this was out at 384. I mean, it'll be gone on the next run. Tony, do you pay attention? I've been kind of trying to pay some attention to what's going on in the Pacific, because it seems to me that in the past several years we get into these stretches where we get that Pacific fire hose jet that goes basically from Japan to California in a straight line. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's not much else happens. I'm seeing, I'm not quite seeing that this time around. There seems to be more, how shall we say, stuff going on out in the Pacific. So how important do you think how important is that?
Oh, well, I think everyone, everyone stares at the NAO, but you really, in essence, kind of have to have the Pacific somewhat cooperate. I mean, the NAO may set, a negative NAO may set the stage or help set the stage, but if it's blocking, what my friend Tom likes to call Pacific puke, just mild air. What good is it having a negative NAO? But you're right, Joe. I mean, it's from what I've been seeing, and I put out on that Philly weather board every 3 days or so, just my 2-week guess. And just noticing what the teleconnections are doing, with the Western Pacific Oscillation and the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, and for one thing, they've been pretty variable. The other thing too is that it hasn't been a fire hose pattern. I mean, it's been if it's been positive, which is more the fire hose pattern, it hasn't held for more than a week or two. And I also say that in terms of more of an Alaskan ridge, it hasn't held for a week or two. I mean, more than a week or two also. So it's been pretty volatile. It hasn't been steady. It hasn't been consistent. So it kind of lends itself to more of a up and down patterns that I don't see why it will not or it should not continue. As we progress into winter.
Now,
I agree, Tony, that the Pacific. Yeah, you probably want to have a ridge somewhere in the western U.S. or right along the coast, and I don't see that. That's it's almost like the blockiness that's happening. It's more like just it's an omega block basically over the North Atlantic, not like a typical wintertime NAO. And even the thing that's even the ridging over Alaska almost looks like that too. So it's it's kind of a weird thing to be happening going right into the first part of winter.
Joe, you got a question?
Well, I think that up until about mid-December, I think we're going to be going back and forth between periods of rather mild weather versus periods of colder than normal conditions. But whatever cold we see will be short-lived, not lasting more than a day or two. Now, Renata, my wife, was just asking me at dinner time, when is it going to get warm again so we can put up the remaining lights outside, our Christmas decorations. We did that on Saturday. Saturday was a gorgeous day. I think we have a couple of more mild days coming up. Might even be relatively mild, or at least reasonably mild for the day coming our way for tomorrow. Then again, maybe at the end of this week. Unfortunately, the warmest day of the week looks like it's going to be Wednesday, and we've got rain and wind to deal with, so that's not a good day to put Christmas decorations up. But I think we might be able to eke out a relatively mild couple of days, maybe sometime on Saturday of this weekend, and maybe early next week. And then after that, I think we're going to be going into a long-term stretch of near to even below normal temperatures. None of this, 1 or 2 days of mild temperatures. I think it's going to be near or even below normal. And I'm actually going, I think, against the Climate Prediction Center. They've got us in near normal conditions for a while. But I do believe that as we progress through the middle and the latter part of December, we're going to be seeing more of a colder weather regime take over, as opposed to this, warm, cold, or mild, chilly type pattern that we've been in since the beginning of November.
Now, I know we talked about the Pacific fire hose, but we don't often talk about what's been the case, I think, the last couple of years too, gentlemen, is that there has been an Atlantic fire hose where the flow goes like a ruler straight across the Atlantic from, say, Boston to Spain and France and Portugal and points northward. Not much in the way of storm activity. That looks a little different as well to me. There seems to be more activity going on in the Atlantic. So I'd be curious, Bill, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? Because if there's no traffic in the Atlantic, I'm sorry. I meant to say that. If there's no traffic in the Atlantic, in other words, if there are no storms out there, and you've got this ruler of a jet, that doesn't really portend well for those that are looking for winter weather in the east, cold weather, snow, maybe snowy weather under certain conditions, but you got to have stuff out there in order to stop, to force systems that are trying to go west to east to try to go more north and climb up the coast. Am I seeing this correctly?
I kind of agree with you. If there's a fire hose, even that looks like it. Looks like it would be suppressed a little bit more toward. Not toward the British Isles, more toward I guess Spain. That's more on the southern fringe of whatever happens with this big Omega block that forms in the North Atlantic. So,
and by the way, I have it up on the screen. This is talking about this block here, the Omega block. You've got this big cutoff well southeast of the Gulf of Maine. You got this big cutoff that's northeast of the Azores, and you've got this big, ginormous upper high sitting off the south coast of Greenland. Actually, if you look at that formation, just kind of look at it for a few seconds, it does look evil.
It's strange because when you get blocking in Greenland, normally in the wintertime, we're looking for the 50-50 low. This looks like it's going to be the 40-40 low, way out in the middle of the Atlantic somewhere. It's way out of position to really be in to be in a good spot for us.
Anthony?
No.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. It's not the best of conditions, but at least you're bringing lower heights and you're bringing, let's say, some chance versus no chance, which is pretty much where we've been living in No Chanceville
And
for
no chance land.
yes.
And I think what we're going to see in January, gentlemen, and we saw this last January. We had a few days where I think it was in late January. It was during a storm period where I picked up 4 inches, but parts of Long Island, Connecticut picked up like a foot or more. But what I think we're going to see in January, perhaps generated by that buildup or that blocking effect that we're seeing now or beginning to see now. I think we're going to see some very cold temperatures in January. It's been a long time. I think it's been something like 10 or 15 years since Central Park has actually dropped to or even gotten below zero. I think we're going to challenge that. I think this January we're going to see a shot of some exceptionally cold air, the coldest we've seen around these here parts in a long time. I'm not necessarily calling for any kind of substantial snowfall, but I think we're going to put the emphasis on cold, in part due to this big block. I really do believe that we're going to see, and Joe and I have discussed this for a long time. The coldest weather we ever see here in New York is when we get that wind coming straight out of the north, not out of the northwest, but straight down out of the north. And I have a feeling that we're going to see that happen at least a few times this upcoming month of January. With the building blocks, December would have to put the building blocks together to set this up for January. But I really do believe that we're going to. There was one day, Joe, and it was on a Saturday. I had to go out and shovel 4 inches of snow. Temperature was like 9 degrees at my house. I couldn't remember the temperature getting that cold for a very long time. And I think we got more of that coming. The coming attractions for this upcoming winter season in, again, the month of January.
You're not going to get sympathy from Bill from that particular on that particular story, because on that day Bill had temperatures not that far from 9 that morning and 20 inches of snow on the ground. Am I right?
Yeah, that was the one at the end of January. Yeah, that was Yeah, about I think Islip came in. I think they came with 24 inches for storm total with that one.
Chuck Cardillo on the chat board asked a question. I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, to rack your brains here, because I don't quite remember, everything with regards to the big Buffalo Lake effect event that happened in late January of 1977. I do remember synoptically it was similar to what just happened, in that you had. In that particular year, there was a stretch where they kept getting these deep lows in southeastern Canada, east of Toronto or northeast of Toronto, where there was a west-southwest wind in western New York, and they just got hammered. But his question, and it's a good one, it's a common sense type of question. He said, how did they manage to do that in late January 77 after it was a brutally cold month in the Northeast? If the lakes were frozen over, or were they frozen over? That I'm not sure of. Do you remember?
I don't remember, but that wouldn't happen when you need the lakes to not be frozen in order to.
But there was a lot of one thing I do remember about that particular month. It was very windy, especially up in western New York, and certainly that could have played an effect on keeping the lakes unfrozen, in spite of the cold.
Yeah, Erie is pretty shallow, so that's like the first lake to get frozen. But I don't know exactly, with their climatology, if Huron could have helped them, or maybe not get that much intense snow, or even like with the wind direction, if it was north, if they got anything out of Ontario. I honestly don't remember. I just remember them just getting blasted.
Yes, and all the snow lovers downstate were just appalled. Absolutely appalled that could possibly happen. So let's talk a little climo, Anthony, because you always like to dig into these, statistics over a period of years, and if you get this, then if you've had this, then the outcome could be that. So what are you gleaning from all the information that you've been digging through?
Yeah, it's similar to, well, I should say that the last winter didn't turn out, I should say, in terms of temperatures, but this past October, and I know this is extremely simplistic, but I had to go back and look at Mark DeLisi, who I worked with, who I still see every once in a while in Watkins, Bill, by the way. He comes in shopping, even though he moved to not your Southampton, but our Southampton.
Okay.
Not in your Southampton. But anyway.
Didn't win the Powerball, I guess. Yeah.
yes, he would have won. Yeah, he would have won. Yeah, I think he won. Yeah, I think he was the $2 billion winner, but he's not. He's playing it very low key. But anyway, because he looked into statisticalness too of like the variances with temperatures. So at least there's like some statistical backup. But just me is more like observational in terms of like trying to correlate. I mean, it's a little world. Whatever Philadelphia, and I could have done the same thing with New York. I used to do it with New York. Philadelphia's October and November temperatures, what the ENSO state is, and then just seeing what goes forward from there. So we had the coolest October here since I think 2009. Now this November for Philadelphia is going to be a top 10 warmest, so they kind of canceled themselves out a little bit. But I gave Joe that, that chart that I did, that if you have in the last 30 Octobers, and I have to like kind of move the goalposts because Octobers are getting warmer, Novembers are getting warmer. So in the last 30 Octobers, if you had a below median October, the chances of you having a below median winter for that same 30-year period was twice as likely.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna put the chart up here. So just a second.
It's funny you mentioned this because I was actually cooking up those numbers for New York City this morning for the last 30 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So the chart is up.
Those are my analogs.
Okay, sorry, wrong chart. 1 second.
That's all right.
It should be an easy switch for me.
Okay.
Wait, I'm getting the same thing. All right, hold on. Let me see. Hang on. Let me go back. Just a second here. So I got that's the only chart that you sent me was the analogs.
Oh yeah. No, I know that, but I think I sent that to you a while ago. Let me see if I could find it, and I will send it to you again.
Okay.
I think I left it on. Oh, did I? Oh yes, October. All right. Let me send it to you through message.
By all means, please do. Hang on. Okay. So, in the meantime, Jess Harden on the chat board, who is in Alabama, and he's a Alabama snow lover. So he's asking, is it going to, basically, is it going to snow in Alabama? I will say this, Jess, the blocking helps you. Because it also helps me here in North Georgia. The stronger the blocking, the more negative that North Atlantic oscillation is, the better off the South is in getting snow. And sometimes if the NAO is too strong, it doesn't make it much further north than, say, Virginia or the Delmarva Peninsula. So my guess is there'll probably be a couple of opportunities in the South that we'll probably see some snow. In the meantime, I don't know if you guys have differing opinions on that, or if you have opinions on that.
I do have an opinion on that. I did look at the long range GFS, and it actually has maybe not in Alabama, but I think right before Christmas with that type of block, it's actually got a pretty good. And granted, this is Fantasy Island range, but it actually has a pretty decent snowfall event in North Carolina and Virginia. Basically running from I guess west to east from Kansas and Missouri, right through there. Whether it actually ends up there, though, that's whether it actually even happens is anybody's guess. But that sort of leaning in the direction of what you're talking about.
Well, I will tell you that not last winter was my first winter here, so this is my first full winter here. This will be the second. The year before that, Christmas Eve. And that was a Christmas Eve that I believe in the east it was in the 60s, maybe even up near 70 in spots, and there was rain and thunderstorms. They got half a foot of snow here Christmas Eve, so they woke up Christmas morning to an absolute winter wonderland. So it does happen. And actually, in the elevation, I live I live just a few miles away from Brasstown Bald, which is Georgia's highest peak at just under 5,000 feet. I'm at 2,200 feet, and they in the uh, they in their film that they show there that the federal government, it's a federal park, and they talk about the history of weather in Brasstown. They said that the climate there is really much more like Massachusetts than it is Georgia, particularly southern Georgia. All right, Anthony, I've got your chart, so let's talk about this. So this was the October and Philadelphia's ensuing winters through the winter of 2022. So go at it.
Right. So basically, when it's the third level down, where I did some stratifications, and it had below median and above median October. And
hold on, I'm sorry, guys, just a second. I was trying to read a question and I accidentally knocked your chart off. Go ahead. Chart's back up. Go ahead, Anthony. I'm sorry.
Okay. Wow. It's the one. This is a 5G. I'm actually in real time. I like this better than last year.
Now, if you can, now that you've done that, can we work on upgrading the gateway computer?
Oh yes, that 2014. Hey, it keeps on working. I don't know. That's amazing. It's amazing. But anyway, yeah, it's the third. I think the third level, like down, where below median October, less than 58.35, and above median October. And this is just for the last 30. Last 30 falls, last 30 winters. And so if you do have a below median October here, you kind of double your chances of having a below median winter. And I mean, I also,
and we're talking temperatures now.
Temperatures, right? Yeah, I never, I mean, when I do the analogs, I'm not saying I'm only interested in temperatures, but I know people are going to say, well, what about snow? No one's going to say, well, near normal temp. Well, what about the snow? We're going to so I just tagged those years along with the snowfall and kind of just hope it comes close, But all that I've done is really more about temperatures and this, and then the snow. It really, especially down here in Philly, more so than even up there. I mean, it really just comes down to to timing and patterns, and you get one event, one big event that will make or break your winter, being above or below normal. So, but I mean, if it's colder, it's easier for it to snow.
Yeah.
Oh wow, meteorology 101. So anyway, this October was the coolest October since 2009. And if you look past it, what's happened with the if we stratify it in half by the 15, you're twice as likely, in the last 30 years, of having a below median winter, or let's say a cooler winter when this occurs. And I also gave you, I guess, what happened in November. Now, I didn't update it that was actually through 2021. So I didn't update it for what happened last November. But I think the thing with November, if you look at it, it just looks like, a bunch of 50-50s. So it doesn't really matter too much with November, what type of November you have. I think the only thing you would say that this is going to be a warm November in the stratification. I think what it probably would lean toward is, okay, it may be a below median winter, but it's not going to be an extremely cold winter, or let's say like one of the colder winters in the last 30 winters. It probably be somewhere near normal, which is really the way things have been going up to this point is really saying it's going to be a slightly below normal winter.
Do we try to read too much into this stuff? I mean, is the data set just too small? And can you argue that the character of the winter has, to an extent, has changed in the last 30, or certainly in the last 20 years since the year 2000, when we seem to have gone into this phase where snowfalls have been above normal, even in years where we've had above normal winters temperature-wise, like 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19. I mean, those were all above normal temperature winters. And I mean, I don't know what all the stats show up for Philadelphia, but it seems if you just go Bill, you could jump in on this. If you just go north of Philadelphia, certainly from New York City and points north and east, it hasn't really mattered as much whether whether it's been below normal or above normal, because it just seems as if we, at least in those years, it was cold. It was cold enough when it mattered for snow, and and not when it didn't matter.
Yes, no, I don't disagree. That's that's why I just kind of I put those snowfalls or just in general. I think there's a genericness when it comes to La Nina winters, as long as you don't have a strong La Nina winter. It usually isn't. They usually aren't the winters that you think back like, wow, that was like a really memorable winter. But the flip of it is that they're not shutout winters. There's winters where events happen, and you're right. Now with the way things happen in terms of like whenever you get precipitation, it seems like the precipitation is heavier. So if you're cold enough for snow, the snowfall amounts are higher. Philly's been, I would say, like Philly itself, maybe not, north and west, but Philly itself, there've been a lot of feast and famine winters late. If you go back like the last 10, 15 winters, you'll see single digit winters. Then you'll see, you'll have like the winters like 14, 15, where we broke the record for 4-6 inch or greater events. So yeah, there's a point where it hasn't mattered. It hasn't been that far north and west of Philly, but I think like from Philly, and especially the people down in DC, I mean, they've been insufferable in terms of like not having really good snowy winters at all. It's almost as if with the NAO pattern where you can do okay with a positive NAO in New York or Boston, but once you start getting farther south, and if the pattern is positive, I mean the NAO is positive and it was positive even before the potential event happens, I mean your chances of getting a big snow out of it get reduced.
But not eliminated, because if you've got a good, because if the East Pacific Oscillation is doing its thing, right. And I have said many times. If you look back at 13, Bill, jump in if you would. You look at the winter of 13, 14, and 14, 15. The NAO was almost non-existent during those 2 years, and yet we had those were two very solid snowfall winters. And they were also those were also cold winters because of the East Pacific Oscillation. I stand by this. Give me a negative EPO. I'll take my chances with everything else. But if the East Pacific is in the right setup, that to me is far more important than whether we've got a block or whether we don't have a block, or if the ridge in the west is not as strong as you'd like it to be. If that EPO is negative, that opens up a door of possibilities that you don't often see.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've talked about that a number of times last few years. We don't get. There's high latitude blocking, but it's not like the AO and the NAO rule the whole roost. Yeah, the EPO has
Joe.
Saying.
Bill, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I apologize.
No problem. Go ahead.
And one winter that really talks to like what you're saying with respect to the NAO and the EPO, especially up north, like north of Philly, was the winter of 93, 94. That was a negative EPO winter, a positive NAO winter, and Allentown broke their all-time snowfall record. And we lost power with the ice storms down here.
Don't say lost power, because Joe Rayo gets nervous when you say lost power, right, Joe?
Sorry, Joe.
Joe, are you with us? I don't know. Did he turn his audio off?
Trying to say something.
He sounds like he turned. Joe, turn your audio on. We're not hearing you. Joe's checking his headset, so stand by. It may sound like the emergency broadcasting system for a moment.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
there he is.
Yes.
Yes.
My headphones are going crazy today. I don't know why.
I said
It's Bluetooth.
I
The
said
tooth is blue.
yeah. I said don't mention the guys mentioned losing power. I said don't mention losing power to
No.
Joe hears you, he'll get nervous.
Actually, they've done better up my way over the last couple of years. They've been doing a lot of tree cutting, the cutting down of a lot of trees, which normally would have fallen on power lines and cut off power for me for a relatively long length of time. And in fact, out front of my house, there's about 4 or 5 trees that they have painted little orange or red dots on, and I've been told by the power company that come the spring, those trees are going bye-bye. There used to be something called conservation easement up here where you stay away from cutting down trees, but now there's so many damn trees around here so close to the power line that they have to do it. They have to try to avoid those power. When I first moved up here, you could blow on a power line and it would go down, but and a tree too. So they've gotten a little bit better in recent years. And I just wanted to mention something about microclimate. Central Park, and I've mentioned this over and over again over the years here on Joe and Joe, that I've always said that for Central Park proper, not necessarily for places even 20 or 30 miles out from Midtown Manhattan, but for the immediate New York 5 boroughs area, December usually will tell the tale about how much snow is going to fall. At Central Park, if we go through a December where we pick up less than 3 inches of snow, it usually means in about 80 or 90% of the cases that the winter overall is going to be below normal for Central Park, not necessarily. Like, for example, we just mentioned the 20 inches that Bill had to shovel last year during that storm in late January. At Central Park, January last year had a grand total of 2.1 inches of snow. And meanwhile, Bill is shoveling away 20 inches. I had 4 inches up here with that particular storm. But it seems to only work for Central Park, not for places at any great distance away from Manhattan. And just to give you an idea, this is the 3rd La Nina winter that we are now moving into. And the La Nina winter we had 2020, 2021, December, we had that 10.5-inch snowfall in mid-December. That was the one that Joe made the allusion to, that on Christmas Day, we had like 60-degree temperatures and 40-mile-an-hour winds, and all of that snow went bye-bye overnight, and he ended up with a half a foot of snow where he is down in Georgia.
Well, I wasn't here for it, but yeah, that's what they got.
10.5 inches of snow in December, and you say, oh, my goodness, well, it's over 3 inches. We're going to get a lot of snow. And sure enough, after only 2 inches in January, February, 26 inches of snow. And we ended up with an above normal year snow-wise. Last year in December, 2.5 inches of snow for the whole month of December, 2.3 in January. We did come back with 10.1 in February, but that still did not mean that we had an above normal winter. It still ended up below normal overall in snowfall, again, at Central Park. So I don't know what it is. Again, a microclimate oddity or whatever, but whenever we seem to get less than 3 inches in the park in December, that usually spells that New York City is going to see in about, I'm 80 or 90%, I don't have the exact figure in front of me, 80 to 90% of the time, you usually end up with below normal seasonal snowfall in those particular cases. So what does that mean for this upcoming winter? That's why sometimes I tell people, my friends in New York City, they say, wait, let's wait until we get toward the end of the month of December. Then I'll give you a fair shot at what you may or may not see snow-wise. Anyway,
Tony, I just to follow up
Yes.
on Joe, what Joe said. I went and looked at the snow data for Philadelphia, for Albany, for Boston, on the notion of December and the rest of the winter. And I even looked at Washington D.C. and a few other places. That statistic, that corollary did not work for any of the other cities. It just for some reason it just works for. It just seemed to work for the Central Park. Philly it didn't work for. Albany, Boston, none of them.
Joe, but I'll give you a flip. to what Joe was saying, and this has worked almost like, I mean, there aren't too many meteorological locks, but for Philadelphia, if Philadelphia gets a 6-inch or greater event through around Christmas, and this has been every year since 1950. There's been at least one more 6-inch or greater event to occur the rest of the winter. So it's like almost like it's muscle memory, or it's like, I topped the tee shot and it went 300 yards.
Right.
You got one in the bank that you shouldn't have gotten, but I think it's really more about just pattern and muscle memory. That it's if you can get a 6-inch or more event prior to Christmas, and this has been since 1950. You're pretty much just guaranteed. I think there was one event where it did, one year where it didn't happen. I think that event happened a couple of days after Christmas, but it's been pretty much a 100% guarantee that you're going to get another 6-inch or greater event. I'm glad it happened. I think during the winter of 2020, 2021, because I opened my mouth in December when it happened, and we did get one. I think at the end of January. And there's like even a 50% probability of a third 6-inch or greater event. So
interesting.
So if you do get something, if Philly gets something, this month, and it's one event, 6 inches or more, I mean, I'll put it out there again. It's almost as close to as near a lock as one could get in terms of an outlook.
I think that's true here too. That you get decent snowfall in December. You're going to just, or you're cold in December. You're just going to keep through a good deal of the winter. That sets the tone.
Yeah.
All right. So Bill, since you dived into the New York statistics, why don't we talk about the New York and the areas, New York City, the areas surrounding New York City, which are just as populous as the area near New York City. You and I both know quite well that Long Island, that Long Island sits in its own little world out there. I know there are a lot of snow lovers that don't live on Long Island that just seethe at the notion that Long Island gets clobbered far more than people realized over the years, now that they have ample news coverage to make sure you know about it. But what are you thinking? What are you thinking overall with respect to how this winter is setting up, and where we're going to be? Where is this all going to take us as we go through the next couple of months?
I'll start off with. It's funny. I worked up those same numbers that Tony had mentioned about October and November temperatures for Central Park and what that said for the rest of the winter. Last 30 years now, I probably should have just looked at below normal Octobers, like I guess you did. But I guess with the below normal October followed by above normal November, it was either feast or famine. Either you ended up with a cold and snowy winter almost the whole way through, or mild and not much. That kind of echoes what some of the other things that we've been talking about here. Whether that's statistically significant or not is another story, though.
So here, let me throw this out at you from that standpoint. I think you could make the case that if that the vast majority of, if we look at the data, the whole data set, not just the 30 years, okay, and we skew the normals, so we know where the normals are. We know, the average high, the average low. Okay, we could say that when we look at above normal years and below normal years, if in a year you fall in that range of, say, between +2 and -2, I mean, I would think that if you look statistically, that's probably where the vast majority of the years are going to fall. So, are we looking at the right things, though? Should we maybe eliminate those, and look more when we're more than +2 or +3, or more than -2 or less than more than -2 or -3 below normal? Is it more valuable when you have a month that pushes more on the high end of the extreme as opposed to the ones that just sort of finish right in the middle?
I mean, it's worth looking at. That certainly, but I didn't do it for the. I didn't do because you only have 30 years worth of data. The data set's just too limited to really. You're just looking at the normals from I guess 1991 to through 2020. It's just, the data set's just too limited. So that we just said there weren't too many years in that where you're really off the charts in either direction, if I remember correctly.
So where are we where are we going after? You're on the idea that December is looking to you like we're going to evolve into a colder pattern.
Yeah, I agree.
A blockier
I agree
pattern.
with what Joe was saying, that as we get, well, blocky to start, but whether that, I don't necessarily think that means cold. I think as we get toward the end of the month, I agree 100% with Joe that once we get mid-month, we're definitely trending towards something colder and lasting in at least the first part of January. Beyond that, I'm really not sure. I don't know what that is going to mean in terms of snowfall. Like I looked at the MJO to try to like trick out some things, and seems like we're not. Seems like at least our big snowfalls are typically the MJO phase of 3 or 4. That tends to be, and we're going to be in the wrong MJO phase going into late December. I mean, that doesn't mean we couldn't get decent snowfall. Just like Tony was saying, it's cold there, and so your chances for snow are going to be better right off the bat. So I think we'll just have to see how, I think the second half of December, how that plays out. I think that if what we've been saying here applies, that's probably going to set the tone for the rest of the winter.
Johnny Quest hit the tip jar tonight. Thank you, Johnny. And he asks, with all the volcanic eruptions lately, and a few in far eastern Russia, no less, volcanic eruptions, will they have an impact? And I just want to add to that question. And we had that undersea volcano in the southern hemisphere that erupted. I don't know if either of you have read about that or checked into that. They did say how it sent up this plume of water vapor up into the way up into the atmosphere. Although I understand that apparently it's all been absorbed now, and have you seen any literature regarding whether there's that's had some kind that's going to have an impact or has had an impact on weather around the world? Like, I haven't seen anything.
Go ahead, Bill.
No, that's it. I haven't seen anything.
I just saw one article that said that because it was more water vapor and I'm going to get the particulate matter wrong. I'll say sulfur dioxide, maybe it isn't, but it was water vapor versus the particulate matter, that it isn't going to have as much of an impact. And if we're talking about like volcanic eruptions that are occurring now, in general, I think there's a lag, and it wouldn't impact this winter. It may impact, depending upon, again, I'm not sure like how much of what's being spewed into the stratosphere, but its impact would be for ensuing winters.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Tony is saying. And besides that, a lot of the volcanic eruptions, save for the Tonga volcanic eruption, but that again was undersea. That was back at the beginning of this year. If that had been above ground, if that had been because that was an enormous explosion, and we need something like that. If you want a pattern change, or if you want a couple of years of abnormal coolness to envelop the northern hemisphere, that was also another thing. It was in the southern hemisphere, not the northern hemisphere. But you need something like a Pinatubo, for example, that blew up in the Philippines back in 1991, which did have a very significant effect on weather and climate for a couple of years in 92 and 93. But what we've been seeing lately, and I just saw something on the evening news tonight, that Mauna Loa on the big island of Hawaii erupted over the weekend. And that was the first time that volcano had been active in 40 years. But Mauna Loa, I can assure you, is no Mount Pinatubo. It is not a Krakatoa or any of these big volcanic eruptions that we saw during the 19th and 20th century. You need, I think, a really major explosive volcanic eruption to deal that. Otherwise, what you need, if you have a Mauna Loa, you're going to have a bunch of other ones in close time frame to maybe accumulate enough to create a significant aerosol cloud in the atmosphere to maybe have a change in the climate. These volcanoes that we have been seeing, I mean, for example, on the Big Island of Hawaii. Mauna Loa erupted. Okay, that's great, but there were no evacuations. There were no major problems from dust or aerosol clouds or whatever like that. It was just another volcano, so to speak. You really need one of these big, potent volcanic eruptions again to have a say in that. We have yet to see it. Tonga, if that had been above ground and if that had been in the northern hemisphere, I'm sure you would have seen already a number of papers writing about what effects it may have on the climate in the coming years. But it was an undersea volcano. Tony is probably right. There's probably more water vapor as opposed to dust and particulate matter, which could have led to a change in the atmosphere. And also, again, it was the southern hemisphere, not the northern hemisphere. So if there was above ground, maybe it would have been South America or Australia that would have been feeling the effects in the coming weeks and months, not necessarily up here north of the equator.
From what I read the other day about Antarctica, Joe, they had record cold temperatures, record cold month of November for Antarctica. So, which brings me to another thing, Bill. I also read that the snow cover in the northern hemisphere is at its highest point in 56 years. Any thoughts on that?
The answer was a week ago.
A week ago, it was at its highest level in 56 years. So are you implying that that level has now dropped in the last week?
Yeah, yes, it has. Let me see if I can share it. If I can do a screen share here, I'll show you the latest.
Stand by for a technology moment here, folks.
All right, let's see what we can do here. All right, we'll find this. All right.
Yeah, he's doing it. Look at this. He's doing it. He's doing it.
All right, here we go. Okay. Snow extent in Eurasia. Well, I'll do the northern hemisphere first.
Okay, and I'm going to just grab some water. But I hear you. Keep going.
Okay, so right here, this was updated yesterday. You can see it looked pretty darn good a week ago, and now all of a sudden, just over the past week, we're right in the middle of the pack. As far as 2022, I think most of that is I think being driven by what's happening in Eurasia. So let me pull that one up. All right. Okay. No, actually, Eurasian snowfall, the snow cover extent there. I was under the impression that it was.
Are you? By the way, did you pull the map up? Because I can't see. I see your menu there.
Oh, okay. Now I have it up on the. And can you not see it?
No, I see the Windows box. The where your files are.
Oh, that's still that's still only what you see, huh?
Correct.
Okay.
So we're failing on this technology.
All right.
moment.
Well, you said it was a technology moment. Can you see it now?
Nope.
All right. All right. Never mind. I'm just going to have to talk about it. All right. Well, basically,
technology, Bill. Technology.
Yes, the gains that we had have kind of dropped off, but I guess the one thing that it still looks pretty good is the snow depth across a lot of Eurasia and Siberia. That's still running pretty high, and that's I guess that's still in a position maybe to create some very cold air masses. Where they go though is going to be the $1 million answer. That's we're going to have to wait and see. Whether we get cross-polar flow, whether the EPO kind of helps them in aiding that cold air to get from across from Siberia and North America somehow.
Anthony, I just put up your graphic you just sent me.
Okay, you know what? And I got another one where Bill was talking about departures.
Okay.
I was going to throw that one at you too. This is best my tech. This is as best my technology goes. I think it points to what Bill was saying about the departures. I mean, not the departures of depth, not also just extent.
All right, hang on. I just got your map, so I'll bring that. Now that's up on the screen. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, no. What Bill was saying. I mean, the greens on there are above normal depth, snow depth. So even if extent is, I I don't know, on this, at least on this climatology, the extent may be a little bit less than average. Looking at that red line, but where there is snow depth, it is deeper than average than where it should be, and especially it looks like a big chunk of Siberia.
Gotcha. And what about the sea ice? Have you guys seen anything about the sea ice? My understanding is that it's the coverage has been increasing this winter.
Well, yeah, you would expect that this time of year. I think that the minimum, I guess the late summer minimum was not as impressive as
yes.
I mean, still below normal, for the long
run.
Right,
but above the I think it was 2012 was the record low. We seem to be trending higher since 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Well, we're not trending lower.
Well,
Yeah.
no, clearly, you can only you can only go up from how low it was.
2012 was just a really anomalous year. I think there was a big storm up in the Arctic, which hardly ever happens, and that really broke up a lot of ice. I think without that year just would not have happened. And you see other years attempt to come close. They look pretty good going into August, and then by September, when they bottom out, they get nowhere near 2012.
Yeah, which was the case this summer.
All right, so look, let's final answers here. So, Anthony, Tony, what is your never to be humble prediction for the upcoming winter?
How busy are we going to be at Wegmans?
Raising prices every other day.
Oh my God! The iceberg lettuce and the romaine hearts. Oh, how many times we've gotten questions about them? But anyway, I guess my thoughts about this winter is that, and I'll say this is for the Philadelphia area, that it would be I would say snowfall would be like 15 to 20 inches, and I think temperatures are going to end up averaging near normal. Now, my one caveat is, and we touched upon this, by whether or not we have a sudden stratospheric warming event or not. If we do get an event that does occur this winter, I think then we may have a repeat. I want to say 2017, 2018, where Philly may end up having like closer to 25 to 30 inches. And that's my final answer. And chances are I'll be wrong the moment I stop talking.
Okay. All right. Bill?
All right. Yeah, I think it's kind of it's not a very certain forecast. I've had more confidence in earlier years. Let's put it that way. The fact that it's the third La Nina year in a row, that doesn't really grab me. I'm thinking originally when I first looked at this back in early November, I had been thinking that if there was any month that was going to buck the trend, that it would be December. And now it seems like even if that's going to happen, that's going to be probably delayed till the second half of the month, maybe even into January. I did one interesting trend I did notice. The European, when you look at its seasonal, when it's weeklies and seasonals, its temperature forecast, it just likes to forecast above normal temperatures. And one thing I noticed in the weeklies is that it trended away from it trended away from that. It's actually going more now with a colder month of December, and I guess most of that's probably going to be on the back end. That's an interesting trend, and there's probably, seeing with that it was the European was forecasting that for us for January. I'm probably going to have to say that, that below normal trend is I have pretty higher confidence, at least temperature wise, that's at least going to carry into the first half of January. After that, I'm kind of just going to. I think after that point, I don't know that. I don't feel like I don't have a good handle. I feel like it's probably going to be a lot like last year. I mean, we did have that one big snowfall event out here. I think if you subtract that, it's probably going to be the second half of the winter, probably I'm thinking milder and below normal snowfall. And I think our best chance for cold and snow is probably going to come late December, early January.
Joe, you could go ahead and repeat your forecast from earlier if you'd like.
As I said earlier, I think the winter, the month that we'll see winter weather here, in my opinion, will be January. If not snow, certainly cold. And I think that obviously, if we have the cold, and especially if it's exceptionally cold, there's always that potential that a big storm may actually end up going to our south, being nudged to our south because the air is too cold and too dry. But I think we have a shot at maybe not a massive or major snowfall. When I talk about that, I'm talking about like 6, 8, 10 inches. But, maybe we'll have a few, snowfalls of a few inches here and there during January, very cold temperatures. And for whatever reason, the last 2 months, the last 2 years, March has been a rather, flat month in terms of any kind of wintry weather. I think March may finish out the winter with a flourish. So those are the 2 months I'm looking at, January and maybe March, for cold and also some snow. And we'll see where all the cards fall, obviously, at the end of this upcoming winter season. By the way, one last thing, Cecilia Hernandez on the chat board writes, Senor Rayo, please give updates. One particular weathercaster in the New York area ignores the weather for the tree lighting, and she wants to know.
Probably because his network is not covering it, but go on.
Well, we were talking yesterday, Joe, about wind and rain or whatever. It looks like right now, to me, based upon the model guidance that I looked at, that the worst of the wind and rain is going to come during the daylight hours. It'll be a mild day on Wednesday with temps well into the 50s, maybe even touching 60. And there will be maybe anywhere from a half to 3/4 of an inch of rain, but they don't light the tree. Like in the old days, they used to light it during the 6 o'clock news. They don't do that anymore. They wait until just a few minutes before 10 on NBC to show off the tree and showing off the tree lighting. By that time, I think most of the rain, if not all of it, will be behind us. And those roaring south and southwesterly winds, maybe gusting past 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, will have shifted into the northwest and may have even diminished a bit. So maybe, just maybe, if they're lucky, they may actually have some reasonably, better weather for the actual lighting of the tree, as opposed to, let's say, earlier in the evening or during the day on Wednesday, when it really looks kind of nasty out there and mild too.
Yeah, I just, Bill, were you off today?
No, I worked the early shift. I've been up since 4 this morning. Did the upper air launch and got out at 1.
God bless you, Bill.
Well, I'm just looking at the timing of this thing for Wednesday. First of all, before we even get to that, SPC has, and you don't see this too often at the end of November, even in the South, but you've got a moderate risk of severe weather tomorrow in much of northern Mississippi, a small portion of southwestern Tennessee, a small portion of southeastern Arkansas, and northeastern Louisiana. And that, by the way, in that moderate risk zone comes with a 15% tornado risk. So this is a pretty decent shortwave that's swinging through. I didn't see what NWS was forecasting specifically for Wednesday, but I was just looking at the latest GFS, the ATZ GFS. You could see the thunderstorms that form in the south. But it looks like, in terms of speed, and Joe Rayo, what you just said, the back edge of the rain is east of New York City by 8 o'clock on Wednesday night.
Yeah, and if it moves as quickly as what some of the models have been suggesting, it's just so funny. They dedicate 3 hours of television coverage to the tree lighting, and yet the lighting of the tree doesn't happen until like the last minute or two of the show. But they may still have the last of the wind and the rain to cope with at 7 o'clock, but by 10 o'clock, it's all gone, and the winds have probably shifted from southwest into the northwest. Temperatures may be falling. If it's really going to move fast, the skies may even be in a clearing mode by tree lighting time. So it may not be quite so bad as what we were talking about yesterday in terms of rain and wind, because, again, the worst of what happens on Wednesday is probably going to be during the midday, the afternoon, and into the very early part of the evening. But by tree lighting time at around 10 o'clock, that may all be maybe past them.
By the way, guess who has a winter weather advisory up and where winter storm watches are up tonight?
Well, I was hoping you were going to say, where was there a low water advisory, Joe?
Well, you know that's my personal favorite. But in Seattle, Seattle has a winter weather advisory, and surrounding Seattle, they've got winter storm watches up all over the place. And as I've said many times, when you've got winter storm watches up, in the areas around Seattle, that's usually never good for snow lovers in the east. We do have winter storm warnings posted up for northern Wisconsin and a large area of winter weather advisories that extend from there across Nebraska. There's a rather cold air mass that's going to be coming down behind this system that is moving into the east for Wednesday, and that's going to spread out through much of the plains. I know Miss Fallerite is not happy about this. She's on the chat board. She doesn't like it cold. We've got a lot of winter storm warnings up tonight, by the way, also for Colorado. And I guess this is for after the front goes by, north central New York. Buffalo has put up winter storm watches for Wednesday night into Thursday for north central New York. So that's for Watertown, for Tug Hill, those areas up there. They're going for up to 1.5 feet. And by the way, guys, for both of you, this is just along these lines with these winter storm watches in western New York. And Joe and I did a lot when they with the big snow event that occurred. I'm sorry, I lost my. There I go, my little box there. I said this the day after the snow was all done in western New York. NWS Buffalo, I think, did a fantastic job, not only staying on top of what had to be a grueling event for those forecasters to have to work through, but to really have the guts to put that winter storm watch up 3 days, more than 3 days out. For western and northern New York. I just think that was, they did a really good job with that.
Yeah, and it's not the first time either. I think that when you're in lake effect country, you just start to see these things coming from far away. So having to watch that far out, that's Here it would be gutsier when you're dealing with like the ins and outs of coastal storms. Where's the low
Right.
going to track? Where's the it's that in that respect that's more difficult. I mean, there you basically have an immovable object known as Lake Erie. It's just forecast the wind direction in the lowest,
and you're all set. But
5,000 feet, you got the forecast.
But still, the three, it's more than 3 days out. I mean, we that Monday when I pulled up the maps. I immediately looked at it because there were other parts of New York State that were under winter weather advisories, and then there was this sort of gap from Syracuse, from I-81 west, where there was nothing. And then I said, why do they have winter storm watches up for the lakes the way they did? And I knew there was lake effect coming for the end of the week, but it never occurred to me that they would have put the watch up that soon. And then when I clicked on it, I said, whoa, they put this up for Thursday or for Thursday. They actually had the watch up for Thursday through Sunday morning, that early, and that was the tip off to me that the Buffalo guys who know lake effect like the back of their hand, and all the little intricacies of what areas get hit hardest depending on which direction the wind is at. I just thought that was remarkable and a job well done.
Yeah. And if you think about it too, Joe, with the NFL, I mean, who would have think that like 20 or 30 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, that they would actually move a football game, make the decision to move a football game
they never would have
Thursday, and was it Orchard Park? What did they ended up with 77 inches of snow?
Yeah. The game would have been completely unplayable.
Yes. Yeah.
They would have lost the game if they had made that decision. If they had not made the decision that they made.
Right.
How do you recover from that? They can't just
And
say, "Well, we'll play it the next day."
And ironically, the week after, they had a lake effect going on in South Bend, in Indiana, and I'm watching on Fox a game between Boston College and Notre Dame, and I guess the players at Notre Dame knew how to play in that kind of weather, the cold and the snow. They obliterated Boston College 44-0. But it was kind of fun to watch a football game where the entire field was covered in snow, and at times it was light to moderate snowfall. And again, this was all lake effect. It was not any kind of synoptic or major storm system. It was just plain old lake effect. And they probably would have had that triple if they tried to play in Orchard Park the week before with that big blizzard that hit the Buffalo area.
All right. So you know what, guys? We went an hour and a half, and that's long enough.
Hey, if you stick around for another half hour, Joe, we can get the 0Z Foos for the NAM.
I know, but we don't have a snowstorm pending. If we had a snowstorm pending, I certainly would drag it out to make sure we got that
right.
got it to that
exactly.
point. Any parting thoughts, Bill? Any gossip you want to share? Any
gossip? Oh, boy, not
Bill. If you
really,
can't, Bill, if you can't gossip, why live?
I've been flying under the radar lately.
Okay, that's
the place to be.
Tony, which golf courses are you gracing? What is next on the Gigi agenda?
On the tour. On the tour.
On the tour,
no,
yes, on the tour.
Yeah, no, I just hide at there's this executive course in Voorhees called Crescent. I can get in and out of there literally walking the course in like 2.5 hours. So I went there today, and chances are, as long as I've got I have some criteria. I mean, it can't be 20 degrees and like 18 inches of snow and go out and golf. But, as long as it hits 40 and the wind isn't that bad and hopefully there's some sun, I'll be there. I don't know. I guess maybe next Sunday.
The advantage of playing in an 18-inch snowfall is every ball you hit's going to be a hole in one. You just would have you just would have an absolutely impossible time trying to find a white ball in a pile of white snow.
And not only that, but I mean, the snow's deep enough, you can't even find a yellow or an orange ball.
Right. So you know what? It's a hole in one. It's gone.
Yes.
Next.
That's it.
The gopher got it. Goodbye.
That's it.
Oh, good Lord. Just trying to think. There was something Weather Service related I wanted to ask. Nothing bad. It was just that now my 63-year-old brain is fading away. So I think that's probably a good indicator that it's time to say goodbye. So thank you both for taking the time out to join us here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. And
thanks to Bill for being up. He's up since 4 a.m. Joe and I remember those kind of mornings, Joe. I mean, Bill, and to actually be able to still have your eyes open at this point in time. I hope. No, please don't tell us that you have to be up at 4 tomorrow morning.
Oh no! Tomorrow's a lot easier day. That was just a one-shot deal.
Okay. Well, thank you anyway for sticking around and being up with us and adding your insight to the upcoming winter season. And the same to Mr. Gigi. I miss the one thing at Thanksgiving. I miss your winter outlooks, Tony. What you used to put out on for Philadelphia.
Yeah, Joe, I thought about that because I messaged Joe with my outlets because I'm still doing them. I'm just doing them on Philly weather, versus versus putting them in an AFD and with more explanation, or at least more hopeful explanation, or more hoping that what I'm saying is half right, not half baked.
Well, we just want to give one more nod to our sponsor tonight, which is Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, in southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. So if you need to get yourself ready for this coming winter with snow removal products, snow blowers, or anything else along those lines, you can either head over to Omni or give them a call at 631-756-1125. In these inflationary times, they have the best prices anywhere. And as only Joe Rayo can say it, the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Good night, Joe.
Good night, Mr. Rayo. Good night, Toni Gigi. Good night, Bill Goodman. Thank you again.
Good night,
And we'll
everyone.
have you both back on. You guys always have an open invitation. Since nobody else answers our emails and our invites. Believe me, I've got a long list of A-list people. Okay, all right. Let's call them A-list people who don't even respond, and let alone show up. But if they ever do decide to come, I can tell you right now, they ain't getting makeup. They ain't getting a cheese platter. They're not going to get, any. They're not going to get parting gifts from the Spiegel Catalog Company, Spiegel, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. It just ain't happening, But they might go. I might try and find something from the now closed Dicker and Dicker of Beverly Hills. See, only guys our age know this. Okay?
Yes.
Only guys our age know that that the only thing missing right now is Paul Lind, where all our boxes meet.
Oh, Paul.
All right, folks.
Well, on that note, I'm getting out of here.
Yes. Say goodbye to Uncle Arthur. Thanks everybody for being here tonight. Leon Probitsky also hit the super chat tip jar, as did Johnny Quest. Thank you to both of you for doing that. Thanks to those of you who hit the like button tonight, even without asking. You hit the like button, which is nice. And we will see you tomorrow night at 7:35 Eastern Time. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, John Boy.
Good night.
Good night.